And we're going to talk about the future and some specialties of role-playing in Germany. But first, we're going to talk to Mark Rein-Hagen, who probably could tell us a bit about role-playing in Germany. But we're going to talk about role-playing international and how things changed. And you're a great person to talk to about that because you've been around quite some time and you've done a few things.
I'm old, you mean?
No.
Okay.
No. I was.
I am old, though. It's funny because I grew up, you know, in sort of the golden age of Dungeons and Dragons. That's sort of when I began playing D&D, when it first sort of, you know, a few years after it came out. And so I've sort of seen it through all the different stages. So I have been around.
So you started out with kind of the classic role-playing that is more like, I've got my miniature and I'm moving it through a dungeon and everything is very rule-based. And there comes a point. There's some guy who came along and said, let's do games that are more like storytelling, maybe with vampires or other undead creatures.
Yeah.
And yeah, what kind of changes happened before that?
Well, my main thing is that I grew up in the countryside. My dad was a minister, a Lutheran minister of a small church in the middle of the countryside, so I didn't have any friends or anyone to play D&D with. The person who taught me to play D&D, I played my first D&D game with my dad. And his intern, who was a young pastor, this is before D&D was demonic, taught us to role play. And so then I was able to meet some friends in the next town over, and we would play all weekend long, and then we'd have to go home, and I wouldn't have any friends again. And anyway, I started really saying to them, we should have storytelling in our game, we should have storytelling. And they kicked me out of the group for wanting storytelling and making it more mythical and more realistic. And years later, when I came out with Ars Magica and then Vampire, they approached me at a convention and they apologized. But yeah, that was the seminal moment of my life, is being kicked out of my first D&D crew. But I'm a very stubborn person, so it always kept in my head that I was proud that they kicked me out. Because I did believe in storytelling. I thought that was the whole purpose of it, you know.
And I think you could say that that you and your games are part of the change of a landscape. That there have been a lot more storytelling games, and that kind of focus in role playing did change, even for like D&D. There's a lot more involved in it now. Yeah,
I mean, it just I was in Lucca, Italy, at the world's largest game and comic convention. And I was talking to the new guys who are running D&D, and you know, they very much have taken the D&D and positioned it towards storytelling. So it's interesting to see even the granddaddy of, you know, dungeon crawling games to be so purposely and mindfully reorganizing towards storytelling. That's you know, who would have thunk, right? You know, I mean, and watching. Did you guys have Stranger Things over here? And so, I mean, just watching that was so nostalgic for me, you know, because I was that little boy playing in my friend's basement. You know, we literally were in the basement. It looked just like that. And we literally did lose the dice and lie about what the results were, you know? And so seeing the changes that came about from that time to today is amazing. Now you have, you know, Nordic LARP, where it's, you know, incredibly storytelling and character based. It's not even a game anymore. As I was just talking to some folks about, Nordic LARP in some cases it's gone past the idea of a game. It's become an art form of you know, and sometimes the games you play are not even fun. You know, they're powerful in a way some art form is not fun, but it's powerful. And so I think that's so interesting how role playing has sort of evolved in all these different directions. And that's maybe the problem too, is that, you know, we've sort of role playing has grown into computer games. And computer games have just completely taken over. And I'm one of the people who believes that computer role playing right now isn't really role playing. They've stolen the name, but it's not really role playing. Role playing for me is this ultimately a creative exercise where you can invent anything you want, that you're collaborative storytelling, you're creating a shared universe, and anything can happen. And it's all in your head, whereas computer role-playing is basically, if you're a game designer who's designed these things, and I have, it's linear. It's always going to be linear. You can hide the fact it's linear. You know, like people, you know, Grand Theft Auto seems like it's non-linear, right? It's an open world, it can do anything. But really, in the end, it's just a bunch of little linear things that happen within this open map, right? But it's not role-playing. Role-playing, you sit down with your friends or people, you know, anyone, and anything can happen. And everyone's creativity is part of it. That is incredibly beautiful thing. That is the reason why I love role-playing more than anything else in the world. And I love games, all kinds of games. But role-playing for me is ultimately incredibly special.
I'd like to talk a bit about something you just mentioned in passing a few minutes ago, the thing before role-playing was satanic. Because that's something that's kind of, I think, specific for the US and something that baffles people over here in Europe. And how did that come about, and how is role-playing seen nowadays? Because looking from our kind of position, it seems like it's gotten more cool again, because you've got actors and you've got stars who admit that they're role playing.
Yeah, they're out of the closet all over the place. Next thing you know, Obama's going to admit it.
Yeah,
he did play.
Maybe after.
I heard Obama did play.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I want to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was satanic, and that actually was, now it sort of seems cool. Oh, wow, it's satanic. You know, but back then it was like suddenly it went from, you know, people were interested in playing D&D to overnight, parents would stop my mother and father, isn't your son one of those people who does this? Da, 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 da. And suddenly, you know, to preserve my dad's job, I couldn't tell anyone in my hometown about what I was doing on weekends. You know, we had to completely hide. It was terrifying. It was bad. I mean, no one knew what it was, and so some people literally in my hometown thought I was conspiring with the devil, you know. And Gary Gygax did not help things by going on 60 Minutes and have a muddled defense of it. Although, in looking back on it, I just recently watched his interview again. I think he did as best as he could, but anyway, it was bad. And then even when Vampire came out, we had some serious stuff happen, you know, or we were blamed for everything. But by then it had gone down. And now, of course, you know, back then, okay, it's hard to remember this, but vampires are seen as this really evil thing. If you're a vampire, you're somehow, you know, satanic. And now you have people watching Twilight where the vampire, you know, glows in the sunlight. And you know, Mormons who used to think that vampires are evil, you know, and fundamentalists, now it's so mainstream of pop culture that they're watching Vampire Diaries. So it's completely changed. It's not so long ago that they were evil, you know, and I think it's just amazing how pop culture can just grab something and make it friendly again. So D&D is pictured on Stranger Things, and we have all these vampire TV shows and movies, and vampires are just part of our happy pop culture universe.
Happy,
you know?
happy. Yeah. What does it feel like that vampires suddenly are like the cuddly, romantic creatures?
Well, I mean, I have this theory about monsters, right? That monsters go through this process. In the beginning, and people don't realize this, but originally vampires were just like zombies, basically. The undead monster every culture has. It was a shambling thing up from the grave. And originally the vampire is Nosferatu, famous German movie. The vampire was an extension of that. He was still very ugly and consumed. And so what happens originally, the monster is usually depicted as very inhuman, a monster, no mind, just devours things. And the second stage is the monster has a mind, but it's an evil mind, and it wants to kill you, but it's diabolical. And then the third stage is the monster becomes a little bit romantic. He's still a villain, but he's like Dracula. Women are irresistibly drawn to him, but he will devour them in the end. But he can't help it. He's a romantic hero. And then the fourth stage is he's the protagonist. The vampire is the sort of the anti-hero, right? And then the fifth stage is he's a sparkly creature. He's a god. The monster basically becomes a young deity, you know, who is just there to save the earth, a messiah almost. And so every monster goes through this pop culture thing. So with I Am Zombie, I think we're progressing you know, and zombies are a very young monster. You know, a zombie doesn't, you know, before,
at least the kind of zombie we know today.
The very popular conception of zombie was invented in the 70s, basically. Romero didn't even call them zombies in the movie. You know, in the script, there's never the mention of zombies, but the pop culture just called them zombies, and boom, the zombie idea was born. And now we're getting in this thing with different movies coming out, and with our game, is that suddenly the zombies have become the protagonist. So I'm fully expecting in 10 or 20 years, zombies will be sparkly D&D deities who've come to save the earth from the bad.
Is there a chance that it's going circular, and that the sparkling deity vampires are going to be shambling corpses again, or is there something else waiting for us?
No, I don't think so, unfortunately. It would be great if the vampire world could be revitalized that way, but it just doesn't work that way, I don't think. I think that something else will come along and become the new vampire. But I think vampires, at least for now, for our lifetimes, is kind of, it's already hit the sparkling thing, and for pop culture at least, you know, it's out of our reach. It's out of our hands, you know. But you can make use of that. You can basically say to people, hey, you know, we have one sparkly vampire, and she'll be playing this character, and the rest of you, though, you're all other kinds, you're the normal. And you can use it. You can weave it into your storytelling. But in terms of pop culture, you know, the well has been poisoned. It's already in sparkly world, and there's nothing we can do about it. We don't. Pop culture is its own thing. We're not in charge of pop culture. It's in charge of us.
Let's talk a little bit about changes also in the industry, because when I talked to you about how Vampire was published and how that happened, it sounded more like, yeah, we just did it. Does it sound as easy as it was, or was it harder? And how did it change? How has the process changed to conceive a game and actually get it on the market between then and today?
Yeah, I mean, back then I could just go to Gen Con, which was like 8,000 people. Now it's what, 55,000 something? Yeah. You know, but it was big enough that you could actually have a product. We had whimsy cards, and I remember I was selling whimsy cards, just a deck of storytelling cards, with Jonathan Tweed, who did 3rd edition D&D, and our partners and our friends, and we were selling it. And Jim Ward came up to us, and he was running TSR at the time, and he was drunk, and he was with.
It's the important part of the story.
He says, "You're new to the business, aren't you? And you want to make yourself a big company like TSR. Let me tell you something. It'll never happen, because we're the first world company, and everyone else out here, you see them." They're the second world company, these bigger booths, right? You're a third world company. And you might get up to be the second world company, but you'll never be a first world company, because if you do, we're going to sue you and crush you until you're a third world company again. And I was like, who are you? But anyway, I got such deep hatred in my heart, and I don't hate Jim Ward. We've talked and joked about this many times, and he's apologized for being drunk. But I mean, I got so full of fury and hatred that the next 5 years were spent doing whatever it took to become a big company. That was my thing. But I think right now it'd be very hard for someone to do the same thing, because back then the industry was full of young people. You go to any game convention, role playing was number one, not board gaming. Board game was in the back room. War gaming was a bunch of old guys complaining about all these role players who ruined our conventions. I remember when Gen Con was full of real games, board games. You kids are ruining everything. So anyway, everyone wanted new stuff. And right now, I think we're basically the equivalent of the Dark Ages for role playing. Right? People want to preserve the old games. They want to buy 7th Sea. That's a remake of the old game. They want the old stuff, but new versions of it, but they don't want something new. And so I think it's our job, but I think it's just an ebb. It's a period of time, and role-playing will come back. I mean, I remember when people said, oh, board games are dead, they'll never come back. Computer games have taken over. Well, you know what? Board games have come back with new rules, new packaging, simpler. I mean, Settlers of Catan, basically took board gaming back worldwide. And I think the same thing can happen with role-playing. It's just that our job as the monks of the Dark Ages is to preserve the art form and keep things going, and then when it sparks up again, we'll be ready to help bring on the new wave again. And I think it is going to come, it's just going to, but right now we have to admit that we are in a Dark Ages for role-playing. That's the fact of it.
I kind of feel like we can already see it getting better, because at least over here you see more young people at conventions, and basically changing, or is that something that you don't see?
In Europe, I see it. In America, looking in the room, I don't see many young people here. Who's the youngest person here?
I think Papa.
Is there anyone under 30? Anyone under? Is there anyone under 35? Okay, so we got a couple. So, but still, I mean, I remember role playing was, when Vampire came out, And by the way, my greatest thing in my life is that the Gen Con after I released Vampire, suddenly everyone in the industry came up to me, and opposite of Jim Ward, and said, "You have saved gaming, man." Because the year before Vampire came out, there was maybe 7 or 8 girls at all of Gen Con, and they all wore chainmail bikinis. Okay? The year after Vampire came out, the convention was filled with women. It was like night and day, and everyone came up to me. I don't know if it's true or not. They said it's all because of Vampire, and Vampire indeed did bring in lots and lots of women, and I'm really proud of that because I think it's important. But once again, how many women are in the room?
Yep. That's something we're also going to talk about later a little bit. But interesting point. It's still skewed towards a male audience role playing.
Well, because old school role playing was, except for like even Werewolf is designed more for a male audience. Vampire has definitely pulled in women, but Werewolf wasn't. There are women werewolf players, but not that many. Changeling was meant for women, and said it really was strong in the gay community, at least in the United States. And there's some hilarious stories about that. But I've always tried to design games that pull in new audiences. But I think we need to do more of that. And I think the renaissance of role playing will be when someone invents a way in which to pull in a whole new audience and make it exciting for them. Because the whole era of young boys in the basement, which I truly look back on with incredible fondness and memory of role-playing in the basement, being a young boy and just exploring these fantasy worlds, that's gone. That's over. That era is we still do that, and it's great nostalgia, but is that going to pull in a new audience? I don't think a rehash of that will necessarily, if we twist it maybe somehow, I don't know.
It would be good to bring more 14-year-old people in, I guess. Because
Absolutely. And I think LARP is doing that. Like the #1 sport in Denmark is Boffer LARP. It's the #1. More kids in Denmark play Boffer LARP than anywhere else in the world.
What kind of LARP is that, Boffer LARP?
Boffer. That's when you hit each other with foam swords.
Oh, yeah.
And so, they have an entire high school in Denmark, which I've gone to a couple times to speak for, which is a role-playing high school. It's a boarding school where government supported, where you go there and they use role-playing to teach kids. So in Denmark, Nordic LARP is going strong, right? Really strong. But they're not doing tabletop. They're not buying books. They're not buying product. They're doing Nordic LARP. They have outside the school, they have a whole medieval village built. They're doing LARP as role playing. They're not books. And I think to survive as a business and as an art form, and I'm interested in both. You need to sell product, whereas Nordic LARP tends to be experiences, which is great. But I think we need both product and experiences.
Yeah, selling product is probably a good way to keep a company alive.
Yes, and the people who work at those companies are vital for keeping the art form alive. The company forms a nucleus around which all kinds of other things can happen, and you want these role-playing companies to exist because they sustain the network, and you need that network, And so, like you guys are running this convention, right?
Yeah, this convention.
But this is a network of people, and if you didn't have your show and your thing, this wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be people right now. Without Ulysses and other game companies, you wouldn't have this networking going on, and things would sort of go away if you don't meet together and do. And this is what problem happened in the United States is that GAMA came out 3 years ago. It's the Game Manufacturers Association. They told all the game store owners, don't carry role-playing games anymore. They don't sell, you'll lose your money. Only carry board games. And so suddenly, across America, the last few stores that used to carry role-playing stopped carrying role-playing games. And so right now, it's a desert. The only way to sell role-playing games in the United States is on Kickstarter. So that means that you have, you know, zero tail, right? You know, the long tail theory?
Yeah.
There's no tail anymore. And that's not healthy. You need a tail. You need the backing of the industry.
Yeah, that's something Ulysses, for instance, is experiencing too, I think, with the Kickstarter for The Dark Eye. But we're going to see.
Yeah.
Is it kind of the theory between drawing in LARPers one thought behind I Am Zombie, with switching up one book for the world and the rules on extra
absolutely.
thing?
I mean, it's designed to be basically, so first of all, the cards are designed so you have the same character in LARP as you do on tabletop. The cards are designed so you can only spend 5 minutes and you have your character, bing, bang, boom. You know, so the people who don't have time to play, it's designed so you can play either the full game system with a full book of rules, or even a hardback of rules eventually, or you can just play with 3 axioms or 4 axioms. No dice, no nothing, just role-playing. So it's designed to be a very flexible system. And then the book itself has no rules in it, because what is the scariest thing to ever give a non-role player? Even if they're a hardcore board gamer who plays complicated games like Eldritch Horror, what's the worst thing you can give to someone and scare someone? It's a 300-page book of rules. You slot it over and you go, here's the game I want to play. And they go, what's that? And you go, oh, that's 300 pages of rules. And they freak out. Like, we think that's normal and wonderful, right? And we just love reading these books. And I still do. I love reading the rules. But let's face it, for non-role players, that is the scariest thing they'll ever hear in their life. What do you mean, 300 pages of rules? Like, even the most hardcore board gamer thinks that's insane. But the truth is, in those 300 pages, most of those, it's not rules, is it? It's setting. It's explaining the world. And that's fun reading, but most people can't say, oh, I'm going to skip these rules and go on. They get to the rules part and they go, I don't get this, and they stop reading. So what we did is we put all the fun stuff in one book, and then basically did it. So just recently, in fact, I finally got back from my friends in Hollywood. You know, I used to have a TV show. The name of the top 20 readers in Hollywood. These are people who just read stuff and then propose it as something. And we sent them, those 20 people, all field manuals. The I Am Zombie field manual. Because I'm hoping that one of those readers will pick this up and go, wow, this is really interesting. Whereas if I had sent them, you know, when I sent Vampire out to Hollywood, you know, everyone read the first 30 pages and then they got to the rules part and they freaked out. And I heard this many times in Hollywood. Yeah, I like your Vampire, I love the art, but what is this section? This is, what is this? You know, they were freaked out. The rules freaked them out. So that's why we separated the rules from, you know, a beautiful hardback art book and then a box of other stuff.
Okay. Do you have any kind of ideas what the future might bring of changes that might draw something in? Is there any tip, or is that, if you have it, are you not going to tell people, so maybe you're the one to come out with it?
No, we have a couple things, you know. And first of all, I do want to say, if this is the Dark Ages, then we are the monks preserving the old, which I think we are. We also have to, you know, encourage the new. You know, news that comes out is important as gamers. We don't just support old things coming out. Again, we have to support the new experiments as well, not just mine, but everyone's. And there's a lot of good stuff coming out that people should support. But what we're doing is we're doing some very, I think, innovative stuff. We're going to do what I call one-shots. So for like 20, 30 bucks, you're going to have a small little tin box with a pack of cards, a little scenario, a little background book. So for instance, we're doing, our next one is going to be called Bleach. Bleach is the guys who hunt down the zombies. And so basically this scenario is set in Antarctica, and it's all about boot camp. Mm-hmm. So you're in Antarctica, you don't have any memories of your past, you're just in this bunker under the ice, and you're in boot camp. Okay, you have some sort of superpowers, but it's basically paranoia, you know. And so the first book is just like your military manual. It's a handout you give to the players. There's a 6-page booklet of rules, very, very simple fiasco-style rules. And then the other book is like a choose-your-own-adventure book. So if you're an experienced game master, you just sort of look at that and you do whatever you want, of course. But if you're an inexperienced game master, and let's face it, a big problem with role-playing is that finding a good game master is always the hardest part, right? Especially with new groups. I don't know if anyone here has played with a brand new game master recently. I have, and it was horrible. Okay, he had absolutely no idea what he was doing, and it was just like excruciating for me to not tell him what to do, you know. But I couldn't do that, you know. I had to sort of take it. So anyway, the idea of the choose your own adventure is to basically explain to a young kid, you know, how exactly to be a good game master, sort of step by step as choose your own adventure for the game master. So we're going to be doing these little boxes, and so the universe that I Am Zombie is set in, we have a 20-year sort of timeline, you know, a 20-year plan of how the science fiction universe sort of unfolds, and so we have lots of different products we want to do with that. We also have a mystery box, which is like an escape room in a box. We want to sell for like $200, a wooden box with a big padlock on front with different arcane symbols on it. And basically, you get it in the mail, and then you put it in your living room, your coffee table, and then you invite your friends over, and they go, "What game are we playing?" And all you do is you point at the box. And so you got to analyze the box, pick it up, look around, and then finally you'll maybe notice little code numbers. You type those into Google, it takes you to a video. The video, you see a video, and it has a little hint on it as to the code. You go somewhere else, and finally unlock the box. And inside the box there's secret compartments, there's old letters, there's a broken watch, there's all these things you got to sort of solve the puzzle. And that's sort of that's something I'm really excited about. We're in the middle of writing that right now.
Okay.
So that's something I think that's basically my idea as a role-playing game without rules and without character creation at all. But it's still a role-playing game experience because you just sort of naturally become into the world. You sort of become part of you become the character who's figuring out what's going on.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we're going to switch over to German, and I think you also have several people who would like to play I Am Zombie.
Anytime. Just find me and grab me and I'll play.
Yeah, over there. There's one of them.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.